WWE's been making the rounds not only because of WrestleMania, but WWE's been in the news lately with the recent transaction where essentially so the company known as Endeavor, who is the parent company of Dana White's UFC, so there's a nice partnership going on there. I got to get your thoughts on this. And as we know, Vince McMahon, it sounds like from what we're seeing, like he's starting to take the reins back a little bit. We'll see. It's only been 1 week. It just happened. So I'm kind of curious to see how this whole thing's going to play out. I just hope Vince McMahon just kind of, maybe this is him like stepping in just to show the Endeavor people how, well, this is what we do and this is how we do things. And then maybe he takes a step back. I don't know. We're going to see what happens, but I got to get your thoughts on this transaction.
I will say it's one of the – it wasn't one I was expecting. Obviously, we were thinking of Fox and Disney and all these big-time things. That I didn't even know UFC was owned by Endeavor until this all happened. I knew that they had that Dana White had sold out a while ago, but I didn't know the name of the company. But I do say for WWE's perspective in the sense of trying to stay what they want to do, I think it's a pretty good fit in the sense of Disney and all these other major companies would – put in some things for us fans who would be like, oh, are the days of like TV 14, or even just seeing old TV 14 stuff, are they really in the past if you're owned, by Disney or Warner Brothers or Universal or something like that? So I feel like Endeavor, obviously they own UFC. So I don't think in the sense of, trying to tone down WWE, I don't think they're going to be worried about that or kind of treat WWE differently. I think they're okay with WWE for what it is, obviously, because they own UFC and they own a product that's similar in the audience. And UFC, obviously, back in the day was a very controversial thing. Back in the 90s, you think WWF, got in trouble in the 90s. UFC never got in trouble because they were not even allowed to perform. They were like, well, WWF gets in trouble because they perform in Syracuse and New York City and all these places. That's why we care. We don't care about UFC because they're so awful and they're so horrible that we don't even actually sanction them to be here. So we don't have to protest UFC coming to New York because we're just straight up not going to let them come. So to have a product that has that past, and obviously, it's current, it's much different, but to have those kind of products shows me that, I don't think, if Disney essentially owned WWE, those things we would worry about, we have to worry about with
the edginess
Endeavor.
Isn't going anywhere. The edginess is definitely not going anywhere. And the thing that, like, when I heard this news break is, you hear WWE, you hear UFC in the same breath. I'm excited for the possibilities of different crossovers from, WWE superstars going to UFC things more often. Maybe some some UFC fighters, which we've seen in the past with Cain Velasquez coming by, kind of hanging out with us for a little bit in WWE. Like stuff like that. Like you might see a Conor McGregor now in WWE that maybe we weren't going to see before. I'm thinking about these whole crossovers between the.
I don't think we'll see. Obviously, they're very two different products. And Dana White, who is still the president of UFC, obviously, the issue is you can do a lot of crossover with UFC coming to WWE, but you can't do a lot with WWE going to UFC because that's a whole different animal right there.
Conor
McGregor can wrestle at SummerSlam, but
Bobby Lashley,
John Cena's not getting in the octagon.
Yeah, but Bobby Lashley's one of those guys that could do it. Brock Lesnar's another guy. But I will tell you one name of somebody who I don't know if they're exactly happy about this transaction, and it's somebody I don't know if maybe they've made amends over the years, but Matt Riddle and Dana White didn't really they didn't have a good working relationship back when Riddle was a UFC guy. So I'm curious to see how that's all going to play out.
Well, again, these are two different. It's by the same owner, but you're essentially still under the same structure. Dana White is the president of UFC. Vince McMahon is the president with Nick Khan of WWE. So yeah, that's where your money is coming from, but you're not going to be mixing and mingling with UFC people. You're not putting on cross promotion shows. You're not working together in that sense. You're still I wouldn't say like putting shows together maybe, but like I do think there's going to be some cross branding. I really do think that. I think that makes sense from a business perspective. The one worry that I would have, and I guess you could have this worry with anybody, but specifically is the sense of UFC obviously puts on a lot of shows without any of the pyro and excitement of WWE. And I do wonder if, like what we kind of saw at WrestleMania, and we've talked about it before with, Raw and SmackDown not having unique sets, if Endeavor is going to, because now it's a business and it's always been a business, but now it really is a business and it's just essentially about money. So, the days of, unique sets, while they've gone away, but the idea of them coming back is probably even lesser than now, knowing that there's a company that's overhead who's looking at them from just a financial standpoint, who's trying to get the most bang for their buck, who's saying, hey, we got 80,000 at SoFi Stadium and we didn't have to have half the pyro we did at AT&T Stadium. So, let's keep just doing that, those kind of things. And one aspect I, kind of think about is when these subscription deals come to an end, are the return of pay-per-view for WWE. And listen, I've talked to a lot of friends of mine who've said things like, well, WWE can't go back to, charging $60, $70 for pay-per-views because we've gotten so conditioned to this subscription thing. But one thing WWE has been doing as of late, and I don't think it's, I don't think it's a coincidence, is making every single pay-per-view seem big. They're, look at this year, look at 2023. Let's go back to SummerSlam. You had SummerSlam in a stadium, Clash at a Castle in a stadium, Extreme Rules, which is probably one of the outliers that was, but it still felt like a very big and a very good B show pay-per-view. Then Survivor Series, which felt like so it could have been in a stadium. That's the kind of hype they had for Survivor Series. Sold out crowd and could have sold out more. Then you go Royal Rumble in a stadium. Then you go, Elimination Chamber in an arena. But again, treated not like a B show, treated like bigger. Elimination Chamber was treated like the biggest Elimination Chamber ever, and it was treated like what a Royal Rumble would have been treated years ago. And the one thing I can say with all of these shows, and even Extreme Rules probably not so much, but I can tell you what, SummerSlam, Clash at the Castle, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, all didn't just have shows, they all had stores. You don't normally get stores for a September pay-per-view. You don't normally, and a stadium to boot. You don't normally get stores for an Elimination Chamber. I can't normally say before Elimination Chamber, let's head down to the mall and go to the Elimination Chamber Superstore. But WWE is doing, and coming up, I mean, Backlash. Backlash is normally just in Providence, Rhode Island, another, B show pay-per-view, but it's got Bad Bunny. It's in Puerto Rico. It's probably going to have Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar in your main event. It's probably going to have Bad Bunny teaming up with Rey Mysterio. They're not treating pay-per-views like this is the B show anymore. I mean, they might treat it in the sense that some are in arenas, but they're going to make sure if it's an arena show, it's a full arena show, and it's not a small arena. It's not Omaha, Nebraska. Arena shows are going to be Boston, 20,000 to the max, and then every other show is going to be a stadium show. I mean, London, do you think just because it's an arena, I can tell you what, Money in the Bank, they're going to have a store. They got SmackDown the night before. They're going to treat that, even though it's in an arena, like it's WrestleMania in an arena. It's going to have a bigger feel than a WrestleMania 11 that was in Hartford, Connecticut. And that's, if WWE keeps doing that, when these subscription deals run out, they're going to say the pay-per-views are going to be $60 each with the ESPN Plus subscription. And you're going to say, well, you make every pay-per-view seem like a massive deal. So, it might be worth it, but you gotta keep that track. You got to make sure you have these press conferences afterwards, special edition t-shirts, banners and billboards, all this kind of stuff to make every single pay-per-view feel like I said, they don't all feel like WrestleMania, but I will say Elimination Chamber, Backlash, they've got more hype than Royal Rumble back in 2008 did. I'll just say that much. Or most of the pay-per-views in 2008 other than like WrestleMania. Everything kind of feels like a SummerSlam now.
No, you're right. I mean, they are making a big deal of it. So I mean, that kind of, in a way, for me, it kind of makes me feel like they're getting themselves ready for when those contracts expire with the subscription side of things, where maybe they do go back to the pay-per-view model. I personally, I would not be a fan of it. I think the subscription model has worked. I feel like it's to me like, okay, if you're charging people say $9.99 for a subscription every month, and then you expect, and then you stop doing that. Like, people are so accustomed to doing that for so long, and then you just pull the rug out from them and say, oh, hey, why don't you pay $59.99 or $69.99, whatever the case may be. You're going to lose a lot of money that way. I feel like, yeah, okay, sure, you're going to get people to buy it, but the sheer volume is going to be so much lower. I feel like it's going to be a losing proposition. I'm just curious. I mean, I know we don't have to worry about
what they could do is they could and I don't know what they would do because they don't really control other people's subscriptions, but they
Yeah.
could maybe just really raise the price. I mean, right now it's $9.99 or less for Peacock. I mean, they could find themselves, on like the included in with ESPN Plus, right? They could be on ESPN Plus, but it could be like you need a premium ESPN Plus, which is like $29.99 a month or something like that to get, and then you'll also get the other content, and they'll make sure to have other programming and documentaries. So I just feel like paying $9.99 for a pay-per-view, it might be coming to an end pretty, in a couple of years. We might be paying $30 a month for a channel that also just has the pay-per-views on it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I hate to agree with you, but I feel like you're right. I feel like that's the direction that things are going. Maybe it'll be kind of like not maybe a hybrid model per se, but it'll be like maybe they'll kind of meet in the middle on price of like what they normally would do, because obviously they see what AEW is doing. With like I think AEW, if I'm not mistaken, I can't tell you the last time I paid for a pay per view for AEW, but I think it was like $59.99 or
Yeah, but they do
$49.99.
like the Fight TV and the Bleacher Report thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could make it 25, $30 for a WWE show, and it includes all your normal ESPN Plus, which for me as a sports fan, I've watched ESPN Plus plenty of times. So, from all of that perspective, it might justify the cost.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, it's very interesting. We'll see, obviously, Vince McMahon's involvement. I still am holding out hope and still believe because I haven't seen otherwise. And, I had all these people that say, oh, that had Vince McMahon all over it. That had Vince McMahon all over it. Like I said, Nick Khan has said that people have written these stories for 5 months into the future. So I get it. Vince McMahon is there. But, more importantly, I think here's what you got to look at. They made the sale on Monday, right? They made the sale after what they've been doing the last couple of months. Why would UFC or Endeavor, any of these things, want to buy a product that is going to be different? What they're doing, what they just did, and then what they've been doing works. So whatever they're doing, like if Vince McMahon truly knows what's best for business, and most importantly, Endeavor, who's the new owners, they would, obviously they want Vince McMahon involved in some way, but if Vince McMahon is going to change what we just saw at WrestleMania, and we're not going to get 80,000 2 nights in a row next year, why then Endeavor is going to say no to that?
My hope is like I kind of alluded to it earlier. It kind of like Vince McMahon. Speaking of he, so him is Vince McMahon. I think what'll happen is what I hope happens at least is he's helping Endeavor like with the transition. Hopefully, maybe it's just a short-term transition. Vince is he's there at shows. Endeavor people are there. He's kind of giving them the grand tour, like, yeah, this is what we do, blah, 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 blah. Nobody better than Vince McMahon to do it. Because remember, he did say, he was facilitating the deal. So that means maybe as the deal has happened, now what he's doing is he's facilitating the post-deal portion, and then hopefully he just says, okay, you guys are good. Triple H is doing a great job with the creative. Let's keep that thing moving, and let's make a lot of money.
And why Dana White still has a big say in UFC is because when they bought UFC, they bought it from Dana White, and Dana White was currently the reason they were buying it. He was the face of that company. WWE for the last 8 months or so has been a Triple H run show, so they're buying the Triple H run show. So That's what they, if you see a red car and you're buying it because it's a red car, you don't want somebody saying, well, before that I had a blue car on the lot. You can have the blue car. I'm not buying the blue car. And yeah, I get that Vince McMahon has a great reputation, but most importantly, Endeavor, they've never probably watched a lot of WWE until recently when they've been when this whole sales stuff started, and all of what enticed them to buy it, what they paid $9.3 billion for, isn't watching WrestleMania 12, isn't watching Hulk Hogan. It's what that they've just been physically watching in the last 6 months, and what they've been watching in the last 6 months is what drove them to pay $9.3 billion for WWE. So you think that that's what they're going to want. You know what I mean? When you go on a date with a girl, you don't look at old photos. You're going on a date with her, and you're deciding to make a relationship off of what you have in front of you right now, what she looks like today, how she acts today, what she does today. We're not talking about anything in the past, right?
Exactly.
So with Endeavor, they're gonna say we want this. We bought it for this WrestleMania. We saw WrestleMania 39. And that's what we bought it for. We saw this year's Survivor Series, this year's Royal Rumble, and that's what's making us buy it. You
This is the
want that.
direction we want to go.
Yeah.
That's when you're spending that kind of coin, that's you have to one has to assume that that's what they're doing. So
Yeah.
to me, I feel like you're right. I feel like they've seen what Triple H has done for the business, and let's be honest, Triple H, taking over things, after Vince. The business has been it's never been better. Morale's been up. Everybody's been pretty happy. It's just everybody. The fans have been happy. Like everybody seems to be happy. And let's just hope that maybe Vince is just facilitating this, and then once everything is all settled and ready to go, he takes a walk and he walks away with his new mustache and new hair and everything, and goes out of town.
He's 77 years old. He's not going to live forever. You just got to realize that. And right now, I mean, don't just start jumping off the bridge. I mean, we talked about it off air a little bit, about how like some of this could have affected Jay White. And I can tell you what, I mean, Jay White's a great talent, and we know that he's going over to AEW now, and maybe it could have been something like this. But believe me, I don't think Vince or Triple H or anybody's losing any sleep over after just making $9.3 billion in a weekend where they had 160,000 people at WrestleMania because a wrestler, who's cool and big on the indie scene, decided to pick a different company to go to. This isn't The Rock deciding to pick a different company. And even if it is The Rock, what we've learned this week is, what AEW is a great wrestling company, and they're going to do their best as a wrestling company. But WWE just shot themselves into the stratosphere this week. And I feel like they're, no matter what, and we can talk, next week about AEW running Wembley Stadium and all that good stuff. But I have to say, for the time being, after this week and what WWE has done, they put themselves on another. If a lot of people were saying it wasn't competition to begin with, but I feel like they've put themselves on another plateau. They are not. I mean, Vince McMahon got accomplished. He wanted this place to be more than a wrestling company, and I feel like if you think AEW was a wrestling company, then WWE isn't a wrestling company, because they can't. I just don't feel like there's really anything that they can have that's comparable after what we just saw this week with the deal that they made and the WrestleMania that they had. It just feels like, boy, and when you go to Monday Night Raw or you go to an AEW show, they feel similar. But after this week, it's like they don't feel similar at all.
And here's the thing too: if you want to look at it from a financial perspective, taking all the the personal feelings out, about Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon bought the WWE, or it was under a different name, obviously back in the day, from his father for a whopping $1 million. He turned that $1 million, in the early 80s, now into 2023, and turned it into a $9.3 billion company. I don't care what people's feelings are about that. That is a hell of an accomplishment, and that just tells you where the business is today. I think people are getting a little nervous about what Vince is doing and this and that. I think we're gonna be talking about this next year. It's not gonna be a big deal.
I will say this much. That actually gives. I think saying that he turned $1 million company into a $1 billion company actually gives him less credit than maybe he deserves, because $1 million was a lot of money then, and $1 million is a lot of money, and I think that kind of gives him less credit because, frankly, I mean, he could have made this $1 billion company without having been, like, it could have been $1,000 company. I don't think that $1 million start even helped out. I think literally he could have turned this from a negative $1 million company into a $1 billion company, because the things that, it's literally like if you became a billionaire tomorrow, I don't think I'm going to look back at the $20,000 you got in a checking account somewhere and go, hey, you had a good head start. Because to become a billionaire, you literally got to go for you. It's literally, there's so much involved. I mean, the Jeff Bezoses of the world, the Elon Musk of the world. I mean, it's not like, well, you had a good head start. $1 million isn't even a head start. You know what I mean?
Elon Musk, though, speaking of him, he did have some. He actually has done business. I don't know if he's still doing business with Endeavor, but Elon Musk and Endeavor, they've done business, whether it's current or in the past. So when you mention Elon Musk, it's kind of interesting that another billionaire has done some dealings with Endeavor. So I'm not too concerned about the deal. I think, again, with the UFC portion of it, we're going to still keep the edginess. I think things are in the right direction. Triple H came out and said things are in good hands. Everything's going to be fine. I think that's the best way to look at it. I'm just looking forward to the future.
I think I look at it similar. Like we talk about The Rock. Obviously, his whole claim to fame is that he had $7 in his pocket, the $7 production company, whatever he has, and then he became The Rock. But I would say this much: The Rock, even if the story was a lie, and we found out he had like 10 grand at that time, it still wouldn't be any different. The Rock literally could add $7 or 10 grand. To be The Rock, you had to be him, and money was really not as much of a factor in the sense that he had to have a lot of things going for him. Because let me tell you, if you gave me $1 million today, I don't think I'm turning anything into $1 billion. So I don't think that the $1 million, like I said, kind of takes away the credit, because I think Vince McMahon could, if they just gave him the company without any actual financial backing or whatever, it might have taken a minute longer. He might have been a billionaire in 1999 instead of 1998. But you needed the Vince McMahon element is what is 99.99999% of it, and the $1 million is a very, very, very small piece of it. You know what I mean? It's like LeBron James. You can't say, well, he did get sneakers earlier at an earlier age than I did. And like, I think, LeBron James could have probably not got sneakers until after, a regular person got sneakers and still been LeBron James. I don't think the fact that, he started playing basketball at a private school at 7 instead of 8, like most kids, like, you can't say that. You can't say, well, Michael Jordan, he did get to go to school for free, so that probably helped him practice more. Like you can't, with one like a Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Vince McMahon, you can't look at those little advantages that they even had, because, like I said, turn $1 million company into $1 billion company. Frankly, he turned, for all intents and purposes, he turned $0 into $1 billion. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and that's just a credit to the business side, not the personal side, of course, but the business side of Vincent Kennedy McMahon, who I hope will step aside and just let the real the new minds, the fresh ideas, the fresh minds just keep keep the reins and stay out of the business, because WWE is in good hands. Leave it alone, Vince. Just step away.